record because when I click on, oh, now I see my pause stop button.
Where is it? Hello, everyone. My name is Carlos Ortiz. I'm the National Program Leader leading this, the Women, Minority in STEM Fields program. We will start in maybe a minute or so. I'll just as a notice, we are recording this webinar and it will be posted on the program page on our website. So we'll start in about a minute just to make sure that everybody that signed up for it has a chance to log in. And any questions that you may have, please use the chat box to send them our way, and then we'll answer them at the end of the presentation. Okay, let's get started. Let's not take too much of your time. Thank you for joining us to the fiscal year 2021 Women and Minorities in STEM Disciplines Grants Program. This program is being offered by the National Institute of Food and Agriculture. My name is Carlos Ortiz, and I am the National Program Leader leading this program. And I'm also joined by Ms. Donna Hyatt and Doris El Resto, who are program specialists with this program. So a brief agenda of what we're going to be talking about today will be a brief introduction into what the Department of Agriculture and the National Institute of Food and Agriculture are, as well as we'll talk about what the WAMS program is, what we're looking to fund, as well as a little bit about the request for applications and any questions that you may have. So very briefly, the National Institute of Food and Agriculture is one of the agencies within USDA that is in charge of funding research, education, and extension in an extramural capacity. What that means is that all of our funds are actually provided for colleges and universities, nonprofit organizations, profit organizations, and many other institutions to be able to carry the projects that are proposed. Our mission really is to invest in and advance agricultural research, education, and extension with the goal of solving societal challenges. At NIFA, we fund projects that with a really broad science areas. So we look at, for example, agri-climate and science, human nutrition, environmental systems, youth development, food safety, and so on. So these buckets are very, very much broad. And what they really translate into is that programs at NIFA really cover many topics that usually, oftentimes people don't think about as part of agriculture. So we offer, we cover projects that really deal with bioenergy, with obesity, with ecosystems, with community vitality, with air, soil, and water research, invasive species, small businesses, and so on. But most importantly, what I want to talk about today, it is our education programs and our minority and served institution grants. So if you search on our website, you can go into the NIFA website and look at the topics of education, and you'll find a slide similar to this that will list all the programs that we in the Division of Community and Education have that really their goal is to support the development and the learning styles of different teachers, students, and everybody that is involved in the educational spectrum. What we'll be talking today is about the Women and Minority in STEM Disciplines program, WAMS. As you know, the deadline for applications is January 21st, 2021. And the time that these proposals are due is 5 p.m. Eastern time. The award size for this program is $100,000 for 24 or 36 months. That is $100,000 total, is not per year. And the program has about $384,000 total to make awards. You can find the application on our website or on Grants.gov. And once you click on apply for grant, it will give you all the information about what the application package is. But what you should be doing in the next couple of days, if you haven't done so already, is first look at the request for applications, and we'll briefly discuss a little bit of what the program is seeking to fund and what information we are seeking to obtain in each one of the applications. So the purpose of the program, of the WAMS program, really is to support the research, education, and teaching and extension projects that support women and underrepresented minorities in rural areas and STEM. The target for this program really it is K-14 education, K-14 students. So we are looking at students that are from in kindergarten through K-12 plus the 2 years post-secondary. So community colleges, vocational school, and so on. The WAMS program does not support projects that seek to train students at the undergraduate, graduate, or postdoctoral level. The goal of the program really is to develop a competent and qualified workforce in the food and agricultural sciences specifically. So as I mentioned, the projects for WAM should support K-14 students in the K through 12 education level, plus the 2 years of post-secondary school, meaning those that take place at junior or community colleges. The projects that WAM is seeking to fund are those that support the creation, adaptation, or adoption of new learning styles or new learning materials. Programs should also provide technical knowledge as well as soft skills for the participants. This will be, we support also social and behavioral sciences. And really the projects, what we are asked is that the project that you design has to support at least one of the education need areas that are listed within the request for applications. And that would be the curriculum design, material development, and so on, faculty preparation, instruction delivery systems, scientific instrumentation for teaching and research at your institution, as well as student experiential learning and student recruitment, retention, mentoring, and educational equity. WAMS projects are to be designed to have a duration between 24 and 36 months. As I mentioned, the total budget for a project will be $100,000. You are not required to share funds with any other institution. These don't have to be collaboration projects. You are encouraged to have a collaboration project with your partners, but you're not required. And very important, there is only one application submission per institution. So oftentimes we see that academic institutions will have an internal competition before they submit the proposal to the agency. So there's only one application per eligible institution. There are 4 project types that the WAMS program supports. The first one will be an education project, which really the goal of this education project will be formal classroom education. Something that will take place that is formal, that is for credit. Oftentimes it's like laboratory teaching or anything like that. It could be also like the training of faculty and so on. In the case of extension projects, the target here is informal education. Will be to provide information to society and to students in order to enable them to make practical decisions. We also support applied research projects that the goal of these projects will be to expand on the findings of fundamental research and really use that knowledge to better inform how we teach and how we improve the educational learning styles of the students. We also have integrated projects. Integrated projects are those that will combine either any of the 3 functions above, any of the 3 projects types above. So the idea within the integrated projects is that the 2 activities will have to be interdependent and necessary for the success of the project. One of the caveats within the integrated projects is that one activity cannot have more than 2/3 of the budget. So you really need to justify how the project is integrated, and that justification has to be carried throughout the budget as well. Eligibility for WAMS is actually very broad. So state and agricultural experiment stations are eligible to apply, as well as colleges and universities, university research foundations, any other research institution or organization, federal agencies, national laboratories, private organizations or corporations, as well as individuals. Very important in the WAMS program, there is a match but it's only required when the program or the project provides a benefit to a specific agricultural commodity. As a teaching project, as an extension project, oftentimes, you may use a commodity to teach, but the benefit is not to that community. What the benefit here is the teaching that you're doing. In the case of the applied research, that's when you may be a little bit more, you really have to make sure that what you're trying to do doesn't benefit a specific agricultural commodity. And if it does, then we will need a dollar for dollar match, that it doesn't come from federal sources. The applications is 12 pages, double space. These 12 pages will include all tables and any figures that you may need to add. And the font size has to be 12 points times New Roman. What we ask that the information that you are to provide in the project narrative is the long-term goals. What are the objectives of the project that you're trying to do? What are the activities that you will be doing, the role of the stakeholders and any partners that you may have. Again, the objectives of the project, how you're going to carry it, and how you'll be evaluating the activities that you're having, as well as a project timeline. If you are from a nonprofit organization, we ask that you add also in your application your 501c3 statement, as well as expected outcomes. How do we evaluate proposals at NIFA? So we have a two evaluation process. The first one is administrative screening. What we will be doing is making sure that you have complied with the number of pages. So that 12-page limit, it is actually enforced. Any proposals that are more than 12 pages in length are declined without further review. We make sure that the budget that you requested is in line with what the program is offering. So in this case will be that the budget is no more than $100,000. Once we have completed the administrative screening, then the proposals move to the scientific peer review process, in which we will gather a group of experts, and they will read all the proposals and then rank them based on their pedagogical and scientific merit of all the proposals that were submitted to the program that given year. The rubric that they use to evaluate your proposals are those listed in the RFA, which are the potential for advancing the quality of education, as well as the significance of the program, the proposed approach and cooperative linkages that you may have, as well as institutional capability and capacity building, key personnel, and the budget and cost effectiveness of your program. There are some restrictions on funds that the WAMS program cannot fund. So as I mentioned, the indirect cost for this program cannot exceed 30% of the total amount of the funds. The funds cannot be used to renovate, refurbish any research, education, or extension space. They cannot be used to purchase or install any equipment. You cannot use any funds to plan, repair, or rehabilitate any spaces or facilities. You cannot use them for endowment, as well as you cannot use it for promotional items such as t-shirts, giveaways, and so on. Many of these regulations are part of what we call the 2 CFR 200 set of regulations, and they're very much, they govern all of our programs at NIFA. As I mentioned before, this program does have a match requirement if the program is to benefit a specific agricultural commodity. Very important, when you submit your application, all documents need to be submitted in a PDF format. So make sure that all the documents are in PDF. Make sure that you use Adobe's PDF. There are some third-party PDF builders that our system cannot recognize. And what we receive is a blank document, even if you have created your document that has all the information. The builder, the third-party builders don't synchronize with our systems. Very important, please add the correct program codes. In the case of WAMS, the program code is WAM, and I have the next slide with some information about it. As I mentioned before, your project narrative has to be no more than 12 double-spaced pages. Anything over that will be returned without review. As I mentioned, the program code for this program is WAMS, W-A-M-S. And this slide has a little bit of information that will show you the basic information that you need for when you submit your application. Again, that's the grant type that we have for this program is standard, $100,000 total, not per year, and the duration is between 24 and 36 months. So once you have completed your applications, once you are looking at, you have defined what the project that you will be having, we recommend that you take your time and look through the documents that are embedded within the application package. So we ask you that you please go and make sure that your institution is registered in Grants.gov, as well as the System for Award Management. This takes a little bit of time, so if you are new to grant writing and to submitting grants to the federal government, I would ask you to please start as soon as possible, because this takes a little bit of time for you to complete. None of these steps are managed by NIFA, so they will be, you'll have to work with the Grants.gov help desk and all those entities to make sure that you have the credentials to be able to apply. We have some resources on our website, so you can just really Google or search NIFA and grant training, and it will take you to a web page with some resources that are available to you. As I mentioned, if you're a first-time user, make sure that you're registered in Grants.gov, have a DUNS and a SAM number, and this can take a little bit of time, so just start working on that as soon as possible. Once you're ready to submit your application, you can go onto our website and click on Apply for Grant. This will take you to the Grants.gov webpage where the submission is to be made. The submissions don't come through our website. They have to be submitted through Grants.gov. Basically, how this looks is once you click on our website's apply to grant, it will take you to Grants.gov. Then you will click on package, and you will download the actual application package. This will give you the list of all the documents that need to be submitted with your proposal. So in this case, what you can see on the bottom left side of your screen is all the forms that need to be submitted when you try to submit an application for this program. So this will be an SF-424, which is an information about who the applicant is, as well as all the budget tables, all the related information that we will need as part of your application. We have an application guide that is linked in the request for applications. So this really has a step-by-step instruction of how you go about submitting an application through Grants.gov that will be coming to NIFA. So we'll make some space for questions. What I want to show you before that is we have also other programs that support some of these education topics that you may also be interested in. So we have the SPECA program that also we have actually a webinar today at 2 p.m. Central Time. And SPECA, the goal of SPECA is really to do things similar to WAMS. The goal of it is K-12 education, and the deadline is February 4th, 2021. In the case of the PDAL program, PDAL supports the professional development for teachers at the K-14 level. And we also have the Higher Education Challenge Grants program that supports the research and extension and education projects more at the undergraduate level. We have heard from you, and we have developed new resources that are helpful to you. So if you want to know when RFAs will be released, we have developed a website with an RFA calendar. It will show you, depending on appropriations, when we are expected to release RFAs. So it is coming. It is called Upcoming RFA Calendar. You can just check that on your browser as well. As you were aware of this webinar, we also have a calendar of events, and you can find all the webinars or all the training that the agency will be provided to you guys, as well as recordings and the next available events that we may have. Lastly, we have developed a competitive grants process infographic that really tells you step by step what are the steps that your proposal will go through, and the steps that we take in order to have that proposal being funded, and how when the program is carried and so on. So it really gives you a broad idea of what the process is at NIFA, and how the proposals are submitted, reviewed, and the awards are made. Lastly, I'll leave you with this one infographic that shows all the education programs that we have in the Division of Community and Education. As you see, we have WAMS in the K-12 and 2-year education portfolio, because these are the targets for the program. Every single tag that you see here is a different program within my division that support activities at that given education level. So with that, if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself, as I believe the chat still is not enabled. So what questions do you have? How can we help?
Carlos, I would like to verify, is this for rural only? We are a suburban urban organization working with women and minorities, and are putting together an aquaponics program. But we're not rural, so.
So you'll have to make a case of how. Here the idea more is about the women and minorities part.
Okay.
But sometimes the language that we have is based on previous language, so it just carries on with the name of the programs. But just make sure that you make a case of how you are supporting women and minorities. And
not to address that we're not rural, or do address?
Do address, but do mention what is the target of your program.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Address not rural. Okay, and that's fine. I mean, we're good on the women and minorities. It's just that rural, I was like, okay, I could hang up if it's not, this isn't. Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question about the food aspect that cannot go in the budget. If we're proposing to hold workshops and a meal is provided because the workshop is, a few days long, is that acceptable or no?
Yeah, so that's part of the 2 CFR 200. And what the regulations say is that meals can only be provided if it is to keep the continuity of the meeting, and it is necessary to carry out the meeting. Like, you cannot provide it and then just kind of like just a meal to go or anything like that. It has to be so that the meeting can still continue to take place.
Okay, thank you.
And you can justify it that way.
Thanks.
I have a verification. Did you say that it was $100,000 per year or total?
It is $100,000 total.
Because in the RFA, it says approximately $100,000 per year on page 7.
Yeah, so there was a first iteration of the RFA that was modified. I believe it was 2 or 3 days after, because of that error. So the current RFA on our website and on Grants.gov, it has the correct information, which it is 24 to 36 months and $100,000 total.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Sure. The indirect costs, could you speak to that, how possibly rent or insurance or staffing even to coordinate this program could be involved?
So the indirect cost rate has to do with your, if you are an organization that has already an indirect cost rate agreement with a federal agency, NIFA will take that agreement but still we cannot provide more than 30% of the total federal funds on it. If you do not have an indirect cost rate agreement, then you have the option of choosing the minimum rate, which is 10%.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes. But that could be for rent or insurance to run the program or anything. It could just be a standard phrase, indirect cost 10%.
In the 10% one, yeah, it is up to your institution to define how they're going to use it. In the negotiated indirect cost rate, it already has a list of what that money will be used for.
And is there a link somewhere to help me go apply for that indirect agreement?
It is on our website, and if you send me an email, I can put you in contact with who can negotiate that with you. It is not on the top of my head. So if you can send me an email, my email is carlos.ortiz@usda.gov.
Thank you.
Carlos, thank you
Any
very
other
much.
questions?
Quite informative. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I had a question about if you could provide an example about the match requirement that you talked about, if our program is pertaining to a specific agricultural commodity.
So I think in the case of WAMS, where you will run into that is if you are proposing an applied research project. In the case of an extension and education project, the way that I look at it is, let's say that you are going to talk about plant breeding and you use corn as a mechanism to teach plant breeding. Since you're doing a teaching project, the part that you want to, the important part that you're supporting here is teaching. You're using corn as a mechanism to teach. So in that case, the matching requirement will not apply because you're not benefiting the corn, you're benefiting the students who are learning about plant breeding. Does that make sense? Did I lose you? Are you muted?
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's perfect. That's what I thought. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Quick question, Carlos. If any of the items that the youth would be using during the experience, the learning experience, and they get to take that with them, does that mean that nothing should be branded for it to be in any way, shape, or form considered a promotional item? Or would they be permitted to, like, for example, if they had a youth-size lab coat that they were allowed to take with them whenever they were done, but that should not have any logos or anything on it?
I mean, it depends. So if you say, I need to buy t-shirts for my students because we're gonna go on this one trip and I want them to have the same t-shirt, federal regulations preclude you from doing that because they could have the same activity with any other t-shirt, right? In the case, what you're mentioning about, like, let's say a lab coat, that's a requirement for you to carry the activity. You should be able to purchase them. You may not be able to print them, if that adds cost to what the lab coat was from the get-go.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a question regarding the target group. So you mentioned about the difference between the 2-year college versus like a 4-year undergrad. So will it fit this call if, for instance, we were to target a 2-year tribal college to get them interested in transferring into a 4-year program? Yeah,
so that would be a 2+2 project. And the idea here is that the beneficiary here will be the 2-year student. And then you're training them, you're providing them experiences or so on for them to transfer them to a 4-year degree.
And so is it okay if I'm not a faculty in the tribal college, but I'm a faculty in like where I would like them to transfer into?
Yeah, I mean, you're eligible to apply. I think that the important part here is that you will have to show that partnership and how, I oftentimes say that you're not throwing a surprise party to somebody who doesn't want a surprise party. So you make sure that the people are, that there's buy-in within that group that you are trying to affect.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
I would just off the top of my head ask about staffing versus bringing in teachers or faculty.
Regarding the budget?
Yeah.
It is up to the organization or the institution to define how the budget will be used. You know, we support, funds can be used for staffing in the sense that it has to be the percentage of time that it will take for that person to carry out the project or to complete the activities in the project. So it is up to the institution to define what type of people they need to carry the project that they have proposed.
Okay, so staffing as administrative to run the program versus bringing in a specialized teacher would be two different lines.
It would depends on you to define what the activities of each one of the people or the differences between these two individuals would be, and the justification of why you need these two different separate individuals.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I have another question about this proposal. Are you looking for a project that has like long-term sustainability, meaning that after this 100,000 project, how are you going to keep up for the following year? Or are you rather looking for something or short-term, but like high impactful to increase awareness in a specific topic?
We're always looking for sustainability. So so we would love to have a project that has both a high impact and is sustainable. But it is up to you to define what your project will be. What are the things that you can target with the funding that we have available and with the resources and the goals that you want to achieve. So it is up to the applicant to define what the project will be.
So for sustainability, are you requesting us, for instance, like how are we planning the next 2 years to keep on funding this project? Or
I oftentimes tell applicants to just really put themselves on the shoes of the reviewer, where what type of information would you like to know to make sure that a project is sustainable? What type of buy-in do you need to see in order to recognize that sustainability? So oftentimes I cannot provide the answers to it because it is up to the applicant to just really define all those things. And I think my most helpful advice is just put yourself on the shoes of the reviewer. If you were to be reading that proposal, what information would you need to make sure that you know that the project will be sustainable? In the same sense, you know, when we think about need, I oftentimes ask applicants to just really tell us about your community. Tell us why is it important in your community. Our viewers are come from throughout the nation, so they may not be too familiar with the exact location where you are. So just spend a little bit of the time within your narrative to tell us about who your community is, who are those that you're trying to affect, and why is it needed within your community. Because it may not be a topic that is of high, relevance to the nation or nationally, but it may be very important to your community. So spend some time to really tell us who is it that you're trying to affect, what the community is like, and what the need is. We know that we're not giving you too much space within those 12 pages, but I believe that it's very important for us to really understand and not really try to figure out who is it that it will be affected in this program, but just if you take the time to really tell us a little bit about what the community is and why is there a need in that specific space, that's space that is well used.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Can you put your email address up? I'm going to ask you to send me the negotiated rate agreement.
I actually don't think we put a slide on it. So it's Carlos, CARLOS .ortiz. And my contact information is in the request for applications I don't remember the page number, but it is on on Appendix 1. That's where my contact information is. So it's carlos.ortiz@usda.gov.
Easy enough. Thank you so much.
Carlos, will you be posting? I know you saw the first slide, the recording of this presentation. Can we find that on the site, or can you put that slide back up so we can see where to access the recording again?
Yes, it will be in the program page. Give me 1 second. Let me figure out how to look at all my slides. There you go. So it is, you can really just, on your web browser, search for NIFA WAMS, and it will take you to either the funding opportunity or the program page. And this will be in the program page.
Last question. How do you feel about organizations applying for more than one grant at a time? For example, the WAMS and the SPECA being two separate yet overlapping programs. So
that's a very good question. It is up to you as an institution to define how these projects will be different. We will not fund a project that is, so part of our job is, as we receive applications, go through the review process and recommend awards for funding, we need to ensure that there's no duplication of efforts. So part of you will be to define how these two projects are different. They can build on each other if you desire to do that, but they have to be independently enough or original enough to be funded through two different funding sources.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have one last question if there's time.
Sure.
So about the target group again, we were thinking of having a very narrow focus to 10th grade students. Is that too narrow of a focus? Should we including more students, more grades?
The reality is that it depends on how you justify the focus of your project. There is nothing that is too narrow or too broad, as long as you justify why that specificity. It is up to you to really define why you're targeting that. Maybe you have identified that there is an educational need at the 10th grade that will then have an impact on grades above. And it is up to the applicant to really define why they are choosing a specific grade level. And that's why the RFA doesn't mention about you need to cover 2, 3, 4, or any number. Like, it is up to you to define what is it that you are targeting within the K-14 education.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? If you don't have any other questions, always feel free to send us an email. So again, my name is Carlos Ortiz, carlos.ortiz@usda.gov, and we'll be sure to reply to your emails as soon as possible. Again, this recording will be posted on our website in maybe about a week or so. We have to do the transcription for it, and then we'll post it. It will be on our YouTube channel as well as a program page. So thank you for joining us today. We look forward to getting your applications and have a review of them. Happy holidays, stay safe out there, and best wishes for 2021 for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos.
Anytime.
Thank you. Gracias.
Bye-bye.